Welcome to LAC+USC Nursing Town Hall Meeting on Acuity Scheduling and Time. I'm Nancy Blake, the Chief Nursing Officer here at LAC+USC, and the purpose of this session is we heard your feedback that you want more information. So the goal of this short town hall meeting is to give you information about the system that goes live on August 8th. So we are 11 days away. And where the countdown clock is on the units that will be going live, and we're very excited. Next slide. So I want to share a big thank you to all the staff that have been involved so far. We have 90% of the staff in these units that have completed their training. Way to go. And we will be ready for our go live in 11 days. So we have 11 days to get that last 10%. So why are we doing this now? Next slide. So what we have learned during the pandemic is we need to be flexible, we need to be nimble, and we need to have systems that adapt. So the purpose of this is to replace old, outdated systems. And as we prepare for the future, it'll enable us to work in a more efficient manner that allows an enterprise approach. And we're standardizing and modernizing the way we do acuity scheduling and time system. And so this will help you focus on delivering extraordinary care and replace inefficient paper processes with custom, convenient, modernized systems for managing acuity, scheduling, and time on an enterprise level. Next slide. So I am very excited about this because I've worked with this system before at Children's Hospital Los Angeles for about 7 or 8 years. And I like to share some of the quotes, and I'm not going to read each one of them word for word, but the nurse manager felt like that this acuity and scheduling system, especially the acuity system, finally took into account the large number of admissions and discharges on their unit, which we lovingly call a nursing churn. But they were able to have enough staff to take care of people, to do appropriate discharges and all that admission paperwork that comes with it. The staffing office really felt like they could see the real-time staffing and coordinate staffing accordingly. And the staffing office and house supervisors work together when there's float team that are available to really determine where that float team member should go. And you'll see later in this presentation, you'll see slides that will give the staffing office some real-time information. The important piece is the CFO, who was the one that we always went to when we needed additional staff, and they needed data. They wanted data about why we needed more staff, what the acuity was, how we were utilizing our staff, and they felt when we went live, we gave them full access to the system, that they had the data that they needed to approve the actual staffing and develop a zero-based budget for the following year. It really made the process easy for the finance department. And the ICU nurse felt like they needed, they got the staffing that they needed and acuity levels, and it also allowed for breaks. So next slide, please. From a scheduling perspective, there is a quote from a staff nurse, because sometimes they'd go home and their kids would say, "Mom, you need to be at school tomorrow," or "Dad." And so they really had the ability to go in and look at the schedule, see who was off or working, see who was off on a day that they could work, and swap shifts. So this system allows for shift swapping. In human resources, they said it was such a successful implementation in nursing that they actually implemented it in the other patient-facing disciplines. So it started with respiratory care, then pharmacy, PT, OT, and then the supervising staff nurse that did the schedule said that it used to take her over 40 hours to do the schedule, and with this system, it's only 4 hours. So staff put in their own schedule, they take it down to look at what the numbers are, And then the SSN would put, we have 24 people on this day and 0 on this day. I need 12 to move. And staff would be able to look at their schedule and look at their calendar and offer to work the different shift. And the ED nurse felt like it was easy to use, easy to input, and well, we won't have this in phase 1. In phase 2, you'll be able to access your schedule at home and on your phone. Next slide. So here's the project update. Where are we? We started with 5 units, so you've heard us say 5 units, but we decided there was 1 unit that staff flowed in and out of, so we added a 6th unit. So on August 8th, next Sunday, 11 days, we will go live on those 6 units. Currently, there's training in progress, and the employees have put in their schedules or are in the process of putting in their schedules. And right now, managers are asking for them to balance the schedule, but the first schedule, I've been told, has been posted. Staff can do shift swaps, and supervisors can also post shift opportunities. So if they're short on a weekend or a day that they know somebody is out, they can actually put shift opportunities out. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get down into the question and answers. Next slide. So the new scheduling benefits are they can view their schedule from home, they can input their schedule, they can request the shifts they want to work, and they can request the shifts that they want off. You can get your schedules synced to your phone, your home computer, or your app calendar. And you can also share your schedule with your family and friends. So if you want to get together with somebody, you can share your schedule with them so they can see when you're working, when you're off. Please make sure that you check our ASD SharePoint site that is live on LAC+USC. And there's a lot more information. And for those units that haven't been involved, you can start looking at it because we will start kicking off phase 2 in either early September or early October. Next slide. So the time benefits. We will be able to do the right pay at the right time for the right person. Phase 1 is a bridge to phase 2. So the staff will be clocking in and out via web clock, and they have 3 computers, I am told, on all the units that are going live that people will be able to clock in and clock out. And so timesheets must be completed as well in the EHR system, otherwise known as ECAPS, so you get paid. But it's only for phase 1 that we'll be doing both systems. It's a bridge to help in transition to the permanent streamlined clocks, and we'll have a combination of a swipe clock as well as being able to clock in the computer. Phase 2 involves clocking in and out, and like I said, with both the web clocks as well as physical clocks, but those old-fashioned punch Fred Flintstone clocks will go away. And you'll be submitting your time sheet in the time and attendance system only for phase 1 for final pay. So next slide. So time and attendance highlights. Staff will clock in and out using a web clock. And a lot of the things that managers currently do will be done electronically by the system for pay codes, which will help and us do it correctly the first time, so there'll be few changes after the fact. There'll be plenty of workstations. They're determining, so there won't be a long line. I think people were worried there's going to be a long line of people to clock in. For those units that have a lot of staff, we'll have more clocks in various different places. You're going to be working with supervisors on any corrections. If somebody forgets to clock out, we'll have to make a correction. And like I said, for phase 1 only, you'll still need to do your ECAPS or EHR in order to be paid. Please complete your training juries for time and attendance. Those just got kicked off, so those are electronic training. And there'll be no changes to our current attendance policies. So right now, all of our policies on time and attendance will remain the same. And there will be some job aids when you have to float to another unit on the SharePoint. And there'll be plenty of people around the first week of go live, and there's other subject matter experts that are in the hospital in those units that will be able to help. Next slide. The acuity for the bedside nurse, they need to do timely complete charting, but if for some reason they get behind on their charting, it's not going to impact the acuity. They'll pull from the previous shift. And if things have changed, the charge nurse, along with the bedside nurse, will be able to make a change in assignment if needed. But it's easy to read assignment. We'll show some screenshots a bit later. It's equitable, so the charge nurse will actually see that acuity will give on that unit some hours of care for that patient. And if a charge nurse tries to give a 12-hour shift nurse 16 hours of care for that shift, it's going to tell the charge nurse, you need to look at your assignments and change the assignment. It'll give continuity of care. Our incompetencies are actually built into the system. So for acuity, if you need an ECMO nurse, you'll be able to assign an ECMO nurse to the ECMO patient. And the visibility to the expected departure date will be there for the patients. So you'll be able to see this patient, based on this diagnosis, should be leaving the ICU in 3 days. But more to come on that. But it will give us a lot more transparency. Next slide. The acuity level will be in Power Chart, so you'll be able to see it. Next slide. The acuity will also be there in Care Compass, and very transparent on assigned acuity levels. Next slide. And the charge nurse will be able to review assignments, balance the caseload, balance the workload, meet the patient's needs. It really facilitates continuity, so you can look back in the system to see who was in there the day before. If you know there's a lot of family issues and you want to put the same nurse in there to help deal with those issues. There'll be a visibility to nurse competencies, so if a charge nurse calls in sick, you'll be able to look in the system to see who else is scheduled that can do charge. And there'll be visibility to expected transitions of care. Like I said, the patient should be out of the ICU in 3 days, and they're not, so we'll be working with the physicians and nurses together to see what happened that the patient's there longer. And it's a legal record of assignments, including partial shifts. So if somebody ends up floating in the middle of a shift, which doesn't happen that often, you'll be able to see who took care of that patient for that shift and where the nurse worked. And there's no paper to be lost, because right now we occasionally lose some assignment sheets. And this will give us a good legal record of assignments, including partial shifts. Next slide. So this is what the patient assignments look like. The charge nurse, like I said, will be able to drag and drop. The charge nurse has a little blue icon next to them, which means they should get 0 hours of care because they should be freed up. If for some reason there's a lot of sick calls or something happens, and they need to be assigned, you can assign them a partial assignment. But we're hoping not to. We're hoping to start the shifts with the charge nurse free. And then you'll be able to see the assignments. You'll be able to see the patients with the assignments. And it's very transparent. So, and it's a very easy to read screen. Next slide. From the staffing office, or otherwise known as A&O, which will need to change once the staffing is done for more than nursing. We'll need to change that name. We're going to need to make sure that edits are made. So if somebody called in sick, somebody went home sick, we want to make sure that we put all of that information so at the end of the shift you have an accurate representation of what everybody was doing. You'll be able to review utilization of staff across the enterprise and across units. You'll see a slide in a minute, and they'll be able to balance staff. So if one unit's overstaffed, and when unit's understaffed, they'll see who they need to float. And it really projects the staffing needs for the house. So next slide. So this is what it'll look like in the staffing office, and it's house-wide staffing for demand and acuity. And as you can see, there's some red and there's some blue. And that means you've got either more staff available, which is in the red, so you need 12 hours. You've got 16 hours, and some of those things you can't break down partial shift. But if you need 8 hours and you have 16 hours, then you've got 8 hours that you can float that nurse elsewhere. But it also blue shows that you maybe need 12 hours and you have 8 hours. So this is what they'll look like, and the staffing office will work with the house supervisor to make decisions about floating and make decisions about where those float pool nurses go based on real-time information of the data. So it really is as transparent as it gets, and it's also an electronic record of staffing. And as the CNO, I can go in and look and see, how is the staffing tonight? How was it yesterday? Or when staff come to me and said we're always short-staffed, I can actually go into the system. And if I have to ask for more staff, I can actually pull the data from the system. So next slide, I think, starts our question and answers. We did put out a call for questions, so we did get questions that we're going to answer here. And at the end, I'll repeat that there is an open email account to send more questions. So will the staff be able to access ClearView at home? They will be able to access the scheduling. They can't access anything that is patient information at home, but they'll be able to access their schedule. And in phase 1, they're not able to do that. That needs to be done here. But as we move to phase 2, they will have access to their schedule at home, which also allows them to shift swap, look and see if they need to have a doctor's appointment, to look and see if there is a shift that maybe is overstaffed that they can talk to their manager about potentially getting off. Next slide. How will we know the request has been approved? So people that use the system will be able to opt in and opt out for extra shifts, or opt in and opt out for communication through this system. And they'll be able to choose whether it's a cell phone or email. So if you opt in to receive notifications via email or via text, you'll receive an email notification that tells you that that shift has been approved. So once the manager has hit the approve button, then it'll send a message out. If you choose not to opt in, which some people may choose to just view it at home, they're going to have to log in to the application in order to see if that was approved. Next slide. I take my lunch at 3. Can we modify lunch hours? So lunch hours will be based on a schedule so everybody gets lunch. Obviously, you can't send everybody at the same time because of staffing purposes. But for phase 1, they won't be clocking in and out for lunch. So they'll be clocking in at the beginning of the day, clocking out. But in phase 2, they'll be clocking out for that unpaid meal break. But break times, there'll be options given, and then there'll be people assigned to be the breaker. So it'll be very transparent to everyone. Next slide. Will cheat sheet be provided on how to put in a request? There are plenty of job aids on the AST SharePoint site, and we also do have some people who've been working with the system who will be the subject matter experts on the unit. During Go Live that first week, we will have additional staff, and we will run a command center, and people will be around to answer questions. But certainly look at the job aids. Those that have gone through training have told me that they feel the training has been very helpful. They really understand the system, and I think people are excited about Go Live. Next slide. So I want to thank you. I love the fact that we're leading the way for DHS, because the system is going to go live in all of DHS. We want to hear from you. If you have more questions, you can send them to the email address there. For those that haven't been involved, there is some misinformation that's out there that I've been able to answer questions as I round, and nurses have asked me questions. So certainly if you're unsure of something, please send it to this email address. We will probably have another town hall meeting after go live, but we will keep a place that you'll be able to look at the question and answers that have come up. But I really thank those that have been heavily involved. Thank those 6 units that are going to be the first and go live. I look forward to seeing you all early in the morning on August 8th as we go live. And I'm very excited about rolling this system out in the entire enterprise. So this is it for our acuity scheduling and time, but I do want to put a plug in. Our CEO this morning, Mr. Orozco, did talk about the EDIA committee that we're going to have here at LAC+USC Medical Center. We do want every area represented, and so we do need to put together a committee here, and I recommend that you nominate yourself or nominate someone that you think would be really good on that group. And thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you.